Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and I'd better start making this video fast because it is the 4th of July and we might be joined by lots of amazing explosions. If so, I apologize. Anyway, you can do this. And by this I mean note the heightened brightness on the sound. That's because this is Energy2. Take it back off again. And I should also add that we can do this on my voice as well if you would like. I just have to turn this knob on and all of a sudden I am much brighter and sparklier. And it is a very extreme effect going on right there. So, this is Energy2. And let me show you what that is. The top one is the one that's on the drums on the same piece of music I've been using forever. And the bottom one is very bright, so let's turn that back off again. And now we've got a more normal sound, like this is switched off, and the various controls you can probably hear better on my voice. So let's give that a try. Energy2 is like the previous version of Energy, except for it has been adjusted to work at elevated sample rates. The previous Energy is a kind of processing that only functions relative to whatever the sample rate is. So if you ran it at elevated sample rates, it basically shifted all of the bands upwards in pitch and rendered it a lot less useful. So it was time to kick in the undersampling stuff I've been doing with delay things and stuff like that. This is not a delay effect, but it does tie itself to the sample rate. So here's what we get. These are not simply bands. This is a weird little algorithm that runs in a fast cycle and adds and subtracts samples on a tight little loop of just a few samples going on. It's a little tricky, but the end result is that you can get radical high frequency boosts, but you can also get weird mid-range boosts that have sort of notches in them. And part of what goes on is we have a heightened aggression, a more sharp, well here, like if I add a lot of rats to the sound, it doesn't sound exactly like I have a, or here, let's do something even sillier. How about a lot of scrape to the sound? And that doesn't sound exactly like any known EQ boost. You could match it, but this is a simpler algorithm. So what you're getting is this very sharp, transient way of approaching it. It almost acts like a oral exciter, but it's not. And as a result, you've got a way of doing high frequency and mid-range boosts that now works on higher sample rates, which I increasingly am just down with. Like I'm designing stuff around running at 96K or so. I think 96K is optimal, but it also will work at 192. And 3/4 of the way, come to think of it. And let's talk about some of these frequency bands. Hiss is, oh, and also, of course, it will work at 44.1K just like the original Energy. In fact, it'll work slightly more efficiently than the original Energy because in this one, if the values are sufficiently low, they don't have to be exactly 0 because if that was so, then the VST would never be able to reach exactly 0. But if it's close enough to 0, it'll take that band out of the calculation. And that makes it run more efficiently when you're only using a band or so. Here's what you do. Hiss is a extremely high frequency air band. It's just this overtone. It might work very well for extremely quiet and close to the microphone ASMR stuff. I think that would really highlight how that kind of thing works, because part of the ASMR thing is being so close to the mic that the extreme high frequency sounds carry through. So if you run Energy2 as part of your ASMR thing, you're not only getting the super close-up sound, but you're also heightening exactly the kind of frequency content that ASMR is designed to do. And that should work very nicely. So yeah, Hiss is a ultra-high band stuff. It's very close to the limit of human hearing. And again, that does work at 44.1K, but what you're hearing is it running at 96K, still doing the same boost, but then being downsampled and smoothed slightly after the downsampling. So it's not extending way out into the extreme super highs as much as it might otherwise do. Let's switch that back off. You probably noticed it sounds very dull now. Anytime you have a boost and you're worrying about how the boost works, a guy that I know, Tim Gillies, would like to say, if it sounds like you lost something and it's terrible and you can't possibly do without the high frequencies you were working with, mute for like 10 seconds, don't do anything, and then come back and it'll probably sound better. And we'll demonstrate that more clearly with glitter. Glitter is a kind of 15K or so boost, and it's still fairly contained, whereas the lower ones are not nearly as contained. So this is giving you a lot of very bright, airy sound. And same deal, we can do the ASMR stuff, but it's a little bit more obviously boosted. And this works real nice on drums. For instance, let's play the music a little bit again. So if I was to boost this, there's glitter for you. Whereas Hiss, you can hear it, but not quite as obviously. Whereas glitter, a lot more sparkly, really. Now, we can go back to the vocal, and rat is interesting because rat is a thing where it's kind of around the 10K zone, so it'll sound kind of nasty. This is often a frequency you don't want in things. But Energy2 also has subtract, so what we can do is start pulling it out of stuff, and even to the point of it sounding kind of unnatural. And if we were to do that with the drums, it would sound like this. We'll pull it out. So that's useful for various things. Also, we can do sort of your Ted Templeman, take a frequency out of one instrument and put it in another. If we put that into the voice, then we have all the more ability to fit in among the drums, because our frequencies are kind of dovetailing. They're kind of interacting in such a way where one fits where the other one does not. Below that, we have Fizz, and I can show that to you both on a voice. And Fizz is interesting. It's maybe a little lower than 10K or so, and it's starting to get into that zone where you have additional nodes in there. It's not just a single boost anymore. It's a kind of high mid-range hype factor, and it's voiced in a particular way. It actually works very interestingly on a bass. In fact, I wonder if I can actually pull one up for you and play with it there. Let's... So if I was to add Fizz to this bass, it's subtle, but one thing about it is that you're getting a kind of additional chiminess going on. Whereas if we take it out, those chimey, jangly overtones aren't there as much anymore. So I found that Fizz often works nicely with basses. There's a lot of sliders here, so we'll deal with it as best we can. Scrape is, again, something that I find it works for some vocals and things. And if I put scrape on this microphone, then the microphone's got this edge going on, and you can hear these overtones in my voice that sound kind of a little bit more raspy. Like if I was going to do a Tom Waits thing, like, "Hey, baby, how you doing over there?" And then added the scrape, "Hey, baby, how you doing over there?" And it jumps right out. And that just hurt my throat. Well, of course it did. So scrape is just another frequency band, but I have named it in such a way where the idea is you can go for that sort of tonal quality. Rather than thinking about it in terms of frequencies, you think about it in terms of the descriptive quality. Chug is similar. Chug fits with guitars in a particular way. Like if we boost that, you can hear it's definitely kind of a mid-rangey crunch going on. And this particular frequency will pull out pick attack from things. You'll notice I'm turning it up all the way. I will explain why I'm doing that. It continues onwards. Like we have, these are just incremental increases in the weird little loop that the samples do, meaning that it's not entirely different algorithms. It's just being scaled up a bit. And Yower was the best I could think of as to what to call this. And then Snarl is, again, the best I could think of. And these also work with like guitar sounds and things. Here, let's pull up a guitar sound, seeing as we're talking about one. What would be a good guitar sound? How about... There's a guitar sound. So if we have scrape, or chug rather, it does not really have the high gain distortion thing that you get chug out of. But we can get a little snarl in there. And it's got a real overtone to it, like that's punchy as anything. Or we can do what's usually considered bad, which is add rat to the guitar tone. Normally that's considered not a good thing to have in your guitar tone, although it all depends. Like there's literally a stomp box called rat. This is not going to give you that sound, but here's where it gets interesting. I'm doing these one at a time, but you don't have to do them one at a time. If you do them one at a time, it's easier processing as far as that goes. But if we do more than one, very aggressive snarl. And pulled, ducked out rat. And you may think that is a very aggressive tone. Here's the trick. I'm setting these all to full crank because there's an additional thing that Energy2 does that the previous Energy didn't do, and it has to do with the way that the downsampling is being implemented. I've got it going on where we can boost stuff generally to the point where it's really, really aggressive. And the more of these sliders you put up, the more you're boosting, but the less specific the boosts are. Like if you push everything up, it's just going to be a big pile of everything brighter. But when you tailor it like I've done, or for instance, I'll do this and microphone at the same time. We'll add lots of glitter, and then we'll take a little bit of rad out of this as well. And then maybe, let's pretend I am a radio DJ cat, and I have to have yower in my voice, so I've got to have a little bit more of that going on. There we go. So, hey, cats and kittens. Enjoy our DJ thing while I play this single guitar. And then, rather than have it sound obnoxious, oh, I turned it off. So rather than have it sound really obnoxious, we'll dial it back and then bring in only a certain amount so that I have the overtone of that and a hint of that attitude there. Guitar mistake. And I'll add a little hiss to both of these, seeing as we're doing this boosty stuff. And now what we've got is a tonality where we have the tonality of that extremely boosted thing, but we're using inverse dry wet to dial it back. And here's how this is different from the first Energy. If I crank this all the way up so that I have the maximum effect, we're using the undersampling effect. We're using the effect where it is just doing the maximum effect I can get out of it. And then, we're doing a little more beard ASMR there. We've got that going on, but it's being undersampled. So the track coming in, this live microphone coming in, is at 96K, because this project is running at 96K. But the algorithm is making it go through the downsampling stuff so that the output of that is downsampled to around 44.1K to operate all of these sounds. The way Energy2 works is if we have just dry, what we've got is unaltered tone. The dry is not downsampled, and that's not necessarily the case for the original Energy, but we've upgraded this. And what that means is if you do the full boost, we've got all this crazy effect noise going on. Do nothing and we have dry, but it is at full bandwidth, no matter what that would be, 96K, 192K, whatever you need. And then you start bleeding a little bit of it in, and you have mostly full bandwidth, but then you have this tonality coming in, and it is adding just as much accentuation as you need for your result. So if you use Energy2 not at full blast, not as the most aggressive boost that you can make, what you get out of it is a much more high resolution effect, even though the boosty part is being downsampled. And I found that it works out quite well. Here we'll take out the yower a little bit. Here's our let's fake being a really fancy microphone or something. A lot of fizz, not that much of a subtracting for rat, and also lots of, well, maybe we want to cut back on the hiss, pretend that it's like an old tube mic or something. And so this is our exaggerated boost. And again, the deal with that is it sounds natural enough, because it's a very high quality boost for what it is. It's an unusual kind of filter. This isn't even a normal filter by any stretch of the imagination. And then if I take it off, all of a sudden I sound dull as anything. It sounds really broken. But if I don't say anything for a while, your ear adjusts and it doesn't sound as crazy as when I had just shut the boost off. It's a really good trick. And then what we can do is start bringing in that boost so that I can have just a hint of those additional frequencies that were coming in handy on the mic and making it more exaggerated. And I can do the same thing up here for the guitar. I can take some of these things back out again and say, let's have only this snarl. That's that raunchy kind of gnarly sound, but if we give it just a little bit of it, and we're not used to listening to it at full crank, that's a useful presence addition. And of course, we can also do the opposite. We'll subtract it rather than add it. Or combine them maybe a little bit. And of course, remembering, since these are plus-minus controls, we're now subtracting snarl. So if we wanted to add, like, chug, we would add it negatively. When I do this, it will sound like I'm boosting. And that's the same as ducking snarl as far as it'll go and having it be a positive result. And again, here's our dry guitar. So there you have it. Energy2 is my most recent plugin. Here, let me go back to OBS. I have been quite fortunate in that we haven't been distracted by explosions from July 4th yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen momentarily. Energy2 is my most recent plugin, and an update on what I had in Energy1. And I think it's working out pretty well. Here, let me go back to the regular microphone, because that was still a very brightened and boosted microphone. It's not normally the one that I use. I mean, if I really liked it, I could include it as part of my normal setup, but I hope people like Energy2. It's more suitable for somebody who is using an elevated sample rate in mixing, like I increasingly endorse. The whole point of having it, it's not just because it's an interesting way of doing energy boosts, which it is. The whole point of having it is that I found a way to make it work at elevated sample rates for the first time, with seeing as it's tied to sample rate, but making it sound actually better than the original one when you're using those elevated sample rates. So that has now become my sort of oral exciter, energy adder kind of thing, even though it is not actually an oral exciter. It's a weird little kind of filter, only not, and I can't explain it any better. But I hope you like it. It could wind up having some usefulness, especially if you are into doing these kind of hypey things and then only, dial it back a little bit, rather than cranking up a whole elaborate EQ, which might make the sound a lot flatter and take away some of your punch and edge and character that you have off of raw tracks. This lets you hang on to the rawness of the track in a lot of interesting ways, Well, just hyping it up in very specific places. Hope you like it. Oh, and if you'd like YouTube to show my videos to more people, well, you know what to do. I think we all know that by now. How many years has YouTube been going? Everybody has to say the same things over and over again. Anyways, I'm Chris from Airwindows. And yeah, I am on Patreon. That's how I keep doing this. I'll be doing it again next week and so on and so forth. Hope you like Energy2. Bye-bye.